What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Arc podcast. I'm Josh, and I'm here joined with Enrique and Austin. And today we're here to talk about just some things that have been going on in the NBA. We wanted to talk about some coaches that are on the hot seat, as well as later on in the show, we're going to talk about 5 of the biggest all-star snubs in NBA history. And then we're going to close it out with a segment talking about Bradley Beal because of how amazing he's been recently and the fact that it's kind of really not resulting in wins. Just discussing what would be good for him in the future and talking about his potential future plans. So let's dive right into it. Start with talking about coaches on the hot seat. The first name we have on the list is Jim Boylen. And I think all of us can agree that Jim Boylen is very much on the hot seat. And if he lasts past this season, we would all be shocked. Can we agree on that?
I think he'll finish out the season to keep some consistency, but there's no way they keep Zach LaVine if Jim Boylen comes back, and I think Jim Boylen is officially the worst coach in the league.
Yeah, I would argue he's one of the worst in league history.
When I see Jim Boylen's face, or if anyone talks about Jim Boylen, all I think of is that moment when that fan, you remember that video where that fan just screams at him or something?
I don't remember what you're talking about.
Well, there's this, basically this, I think this fan said, you suck, and Jim Boylen literally, showed signs of weakness, or it was just a bad,
he's just in way over his head.
Yeah.
It
was just bad.
He was an okay college coach, and I was talking to a Bulls fan whenever he was hired as the head coach, and he was talking about how he won championships with the Spurs as assistant coach and won 2 championships with the Rockets as a head coach. Not head coach, but I don't think he has the not really maturity, but I don't understand if he truly has what it takes to be an NBA head coach.
Clearly, he does not.
Yeah,
he may have some good pointers, and that's why he was on those really good teams, the 94 and 95 Rockets and the 2014 Spurs. But I don't feel like he is enough to be a full, well-rounded coach in the NBA.
There's a reason that a coach can be around for so long and have positions like that for so long and never wind up being an NBA head coach until recently. And then as soon as he is, he's been a mess. The Bulls have been absolutely awful since he took over, and they're just such a mess. We remember when he got hired, a week into his tenure, the Bulls were going on strike basically because he was trying to run practices like Popovich and stuff like that.
There's one coach who can do that, and that's Popovich.
Exactly.
There's a reason why Popovich can do it. He never so.
Exactly, because Popovich is the greatest head coach of all time, or at least you can make an argument. In most people's consensus,
there is no argument.
Yeah, it's him and no one else. I know there's great head coaches, but it's Popovich. You don't make 22 straight playoffs without being the greatest head coach of all time.
Oh, for sure, I agree with y'all. And I think 90% of NBA fans would agree with y'all as well.
Well, I think Vlade Divac would disagree with you.
Yeah, you probably think it's Luke Walton because reasons.
We'll get to that.
We can transition right into our next NBA head coach, Luke Walton.
Okay, let's talk about it right now then. Let's dive into Luke Walton.
Yeah.
What do you think, Austin? What are your thoughts on Luke Walton and his half season with the Kings?
Oh, Luke Walton. Where do I even start? They've been
so bad.
They definitely been a big disappointment this year. I thought many players would improve greatly, and I feel like they've been stunted almost by the presence of Luke Walton. His new system that he's put into this organization is definitely not working at all, and something needs to be changed soon, or the players just need to adapt. Divac needs to make a move now. I think either if Luke Walton's still the head coach by the end of the season, or the end of the off season, really, he'll be head coach next year. But if he's not, they need to make a change now so that De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, all their other young players can get accustomed to him before next season, or they're going to suck like they do this year.
And the thing that I was thinking, in terms of Luke Walton, is the fact that we know that Vlade Divac is also on the hot seat in Sacramento. There have been rumors about potentially both of them being gone, and just there are a lot of rumors of unrest in that organization. And we know that if Vlade Divac, as the general manager, is in a position where he thinks his job is in jeopardy, which there's a very good chance that it is, he's going to basically want to look to place blame on anybody else. And the easiest target for that blame is Luke Walton, because last year with Dave Yeager, they were a playoff team or close to it for most of the year. And at the very least, they were very competitive. They were showing lots of signs of improvement. De'Aaron Fox was improving. Marvin Bagley had a really nice rookie year. Buddy Hield was really good last year. And we saw that team improving steadily and showing signs of promise for the future. And this year, that just seems to have disappeared. And so obviously, with Vlade also having his job at risk, he's going to look to place blame on somebody else. The easiest place to place that blame is Luke Walton. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I just looked up a interesting stat. So this last season, under Dave Yeager, the Sacramento Kings were third in pace. Obviously that means just how fast they play. So basically, the Kings ran a really fast system. But then you look at this season, and then they're all the way down to 24. So clearly, that might be one of the reasons why they have stunted the growth of these young players. I feel like these young players, I think they need to use their athleticism and youth in order to be successful. I mean, we saw it last year. I just don't understand why they changed it. You have the fastest point guard in the league, and you don't use that speed. I don't understand.
They have so much youth and athleticism. They have athleticism.
That's what I loved about the Wizards teams of in 2014, 15, 16 is because we use John Wall's speed as an asset. I don't see the Kings doing that at all.
Yeah, the Kings
exactly. You have guys all over like De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley and even Harrison Barnes and other guys like that. I mean, they're athletic guys. They love to run. They play well when they're pushing the ball in transition. They have guys who can shoot. They have guys who can finish at the rim. And just Luke Walton, his lack of realization, it seems like, of the strengths of his players just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. He doesn't know what assets he really has. For some reason, he can't get over the fact of that. He thinks he's still with a team who can't run the floor when that's what they're built for.
You have to coach to the players on your team. And you can't just coach a system because sometimes that system doesn't work with the players that you have. And Luke Walton is just blind to that. And I think that's a big problem. And I would be surprised for that reason if he returns next season for the Kings.
I'd be surprised if both Vlad and Luke return. I wouldn't be surprised if Luke did and Vlad did not, or vice versa. But definitely not both.
I agree. One of them will be gone. It would stun me if neither.
Yeah, same. I would be shocked.
In a nutshell, Luke Walton is very bad.
Not very good.
Not as bad as Jim Boylan somehow, but he's bad.
No, definitely not worse. If I got the choice, I would choose Luke.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. The Bulls should be a playoff team. Like, you look at their roster.
They should at least be competing for a playoff spot.
I mean, they're kind of close, but I mean, they should be. Like, if that team was not even close, I mean, it'd have to be due to injury. But
yeah, I agree. We do need to transition though into the next coach on the hot seat, though. I will say that. And this one is definitely a different type of. I mean, it's a different level of success for the team. But the other coach that we would say is really on the hot seat is Mike D'Antoni. And it's basically known that if the Rockets don't make the Western Conference Finals this year, at a minimum, he's gone. I mean, the Rockets have let him coach his system and turn the Rockets into an ISO team that basically just shoots threes and lets James Harden control the ball. And it has become Russell Westbrook to that extent as well. And while it's been working more of late, and they have seen more success, and they have been really successful since they switched to this uber small ball lineup and fully committed to it.
Well, here's the thing. Nothing is truly successful unless you win a championship.
Yeah.
Everything and that's the thing.
That's the thing is we've been sitting there with the Rockets for the last 3 or 4 years looking at this team as a championship. And they've almost done it a couple times. And in 2017, they probably would have made the finals at a minimum. And in all likelihood, won the finals. I'm sorry, 2018. They probably would have won the finals if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt. But at this point, that doesn't really matter that much anymore. Exactly, because they've been sitting here for a few years now in a position to contend with the same coaches and the same system. And at this point, if they don't start to see legitimate results, he's gone.
Here's
I
the
think
thing.
it's as simple as that.
This may be the last chance Mike D'Antoni has of his entire career. For this plain reason. He has had many experimentations throughout his entire coaching career, and none have worked. They may have gotten a ton of wins, had MVPs, had great seasons all around, but without a championship, nobody truly cares.
And that's been Mike D'Antoni his whole career.
That is huge facts.
He's like, oh, I had these great teams with Amari Stoudemire, Joe Johnson, Steve Nash,
Sean Marion.
Now I have James Harden, Russell Westbrook playing this ultra lineup. Nobody's ever seen us this small before. Well, did he win a championship? Well, I guess we'll find out. But if he doesn't, he's gone.
As simple as that.
I don't know if he'll be gone. I think they need to make the conference championship and be competitive.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah. If you can
know.
make it,
because last year they missed it.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like if he makes the conference finals this year and he'll get re-signed to a 1-year deal. Or he'll keep it for one more. Because they can't continue to be in this state of purgatory. When they're like, oh, we're so good, make it to the conference finals, oh, we're going to lose again. They need to continue to improve. So if this year they make it to the Western, the next year they got to make it to the finals. And the next year they almost got to win it. Because if they don't win it quickly, James Harden's going to be gone. Russell Westbrook's going to be gone. Or if they're not gone, they're going to be even worse than they are right now.
That's the thing, though. Is their core is running out of time. Eric Gordon is getting old. PJ Tucker is getting old. James Harden is even starting to age. Westbrook is starting to age. These guys are hitting the tail end of their careers. So at this point, you have to start to see results. There will be changes.
Yeah.
It doesn't get much simpler than that.
If they don't make the finals within the next 2 years, they're done.
Oh, for sure.
James Harden, this is also a huge thing about James Harden. If James Harden cannot win a championship, his legacy will be known as the guy who got fouled a lot, shot a lot of free throws, but couldn't win.
Basically, Dwayne Wade without chips.
Yeah, exactly. And we look at guys, I mean, like Charles Barkley and Allen Iverson alone. And yes, they're some of the greatest players of all time, but we never consider them in the GOAT conversation, or even most of the time in like best player at their position conversation of all time, just because they did not have the success that is necessary to be considered in those conversations.
James Harden would be worse, because despite the fact that he still won a championship, Allen was the best player on his team. Charles was the best player on his team when they went to the championship. The difference is, if James Harden does not make the championship in his prime, he basically never made it. 6-man of the year Harden doesn't. You can't count this as legit. James Harden's reason why.
Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden on the same team. Best team ever.
That wasn't Harden's team.
Yeah, you can't count it for the plain reason that
they aren't the same.
He needs to make it while he's in the prime of his career, or it's not his.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
Yeah, let's continue.
I think we should continue, though, to transition to a different category of coaches. And we got a couple, I wouldn't say are on like hot seat where they have to perform now or they're gone or they are gone, basically. And those coaches are Brett Brown and Terry Stotts, who are in slightly different situations, but also have proven themselves to at least be capable of success. Say what you will about Brett Brown specifically as a coach, but he has proven his team as capable of success. But I wouldn't put him or Stotts in the same level of, I guess, as hot of a seat as you would put those other three guys. But at the same time, especially Brett Brown, if they don't see results, let's say the Sixers go to the playoffs and they lose in the first round of the Heat, he's gone.
Yeah, he's definitely
because they have this. I mean, they have I kind of want to say super team. They have two stars. That's what many teams around this league have, is those two stars. And they have their two stars. And not only that, but they have legitimate quality role players around him who will be healthy by the playoffs at them out of middle. And guys like Tobias Harris and Josh Richardson. And even guys like Matisse Thybulle and Furkan Korkmaz who can play legitimate roles on a playoff team because of how valuable they are at the skills that they are really good at.
Also, they can't pull the experience card now. They made it last year. They can't say, oh, we never made it. Also, now that you have you have experience in the big man spot. You can't just say now, oh, we've never made it before, now we have an excuse. It's not a reason anymore. You can't just bring that to the table and say, oh, I need another because our guys are inexperienced. No, you need to perform now. Another thing about Brett Brown is that I don't feel like his teams are growing as much as they should be.
Yeah.
And I think the organization can see that. their team should probably be better than they are this year, at least record-wise. They should be a 3 seed or a 4 seed, not a 5. They should definitely have a home court advantage first round, and they don't right now.
For sure.
I think
what were you saying, Enrique?
I think everyone thought. I mean, in the beginning of the season, when everyone was making obviously their, mock playoff predictions way too early, playoff predictions. Everyone thought at first it was gonna be the Bucks and the 76ers, and then no one else. And clearly, this season that has not been the case. But I mean, there was a legitimate reason. There's a legitimate reason why we all thought the 76ers were going to be that, second best team, or maybe even a championship contender. I mean, they brought in Al Horford. Yeah.
To a lot of people, they were the favorites in the East this year.
But here's the thing.
It's crazy.
In the East.
Everyone thought no one could compete with their height. No one thought that. Or everyone thought that.
Here's my thing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we know what you mean.
Yeah. Here's my thing. No matter how bad or how good you think of a coach, any coach in the league, winning is the great equalizer. That's my favorite quote. Because no matter how bad you think a player is, if he consistently wins, he's doing something wrong. I don't like Brett Brown as a coach. However, if they go forward in the playoffs this year, it's undeniable that he should stay. As much as I disagree that he's a top-tier coach in the league, like I said, winning's the great equalizer. If he can prove all of us wrong and win games despite how good of a coach I think he is, he should stay. But that's why I think that's why I think we should transition to Terry Stotts.
Yeah.
Right now.
Kind of the same situation.
Can we just agree that we're all surprised to see the Trailblazers as bad as they are this year?
Oh, dude,
definitely.
We can tell you, the Blazers.
Yeah.
Look, they made the Western Conference Finals last year,
and
I thought they got better.
And yes, they got swept, but they put up a fight. They were up double digits in 3 of those 4 games. They were competitive.
That's the closest sweep of all time for this reason. The Blazers led more minutes than the Warriors did that series. And they got swept.
And now,
swept.
Look, they have the same roster that they did last year, and you could argue that in the playoffs. And you can argue that it's a better roster. Exactly, you can argue that it is because last year who were they playing in the playoffs? Big minutes. They were playing big minutes to guys like Enes Kanter and Mo Harkless, who yes are valuable role players, but replacing them with guys like Hassan Whiteside, who has had a really good year, like an amazing year, and a guy like Carmelo, who has had a career resurgence of sorts and has produced at a solid level. You would have looked at this team before the season. If I told you before the season that the Trailblazers were basically going to return the same core and add Hassan Whiteside and Carmelo, and that they were going to perform admirably, and that they were even going to be in the playoff race barely, at a minimum, they're like a top 3 seed. And they're not in the playoff race barely. Like, they're barely holding on to even have a chance at the 8th seed.
And this is where the coaching comes in.
And that's the thing about Stotts, is that even though Stotts has had tons of success, the Blazers have been a 50-win team for the last 5 years. Even when we expected the Blazers to be bad when Aldridge left to the Spurs a few years ago, they were able to turn Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum into multiple 50-win seasons. And as good of a coach as we think Stotts is, and I think we can generally agree that Stotts is generally put into that discussion of a tier 1, or I guess a tier 2 coach, in that he's a very solid coach. You have to produce. And when your team has underperformed to this level, this dramatically, it's just hard to look at that and be like, say that there don't need to be changes made. And those changes will start at the top with Terry Stotts.
Winning's a great equalizer. I like Terry Stotts.
This team
a lot.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you underperform to this level, where I thought you were going to be a 1 seed and you're probably going to miss the playoffs, I say probably because I think this is kind of hell, but they definitely could, but I think they won't.
Even if they make the playoffs, though, they're getting swept in the first round.
I could make a legitimate.
So also the Blazers, I don't like this team doesn't really have a huge ceiling. I mean, they have some good young players like Nazir Little, who I don't know how they got him that late in the draft.
Anthony Simons.
Yeah, Anthony Simons, but they don't have a high ceiling. Like, the time to win is now, and them not winning now is a huge problem.
Whenever you say the time of the win should have been in the past, that's a problem. I think the time to win is here.
they don't have it. They're not going to improve much.
Yeah.
That you have teams that are going to be threats for years, like the Clippers and the Lakers, and then you have teams that are improve. Looking at like the Mavericks and the Thunder as Shea turns more and more into a star, and teams like that, that the Mavericks and the Thunder especially, that weren't really expected to be
Grizzlies.
Another great example with
I
John
think they'll
Morant,
make the playoffs.
Jaren Jackson, and Dylan Brooks. But the Pelicans are going to improve over the next couple of years. We have all these teams in the West that are going to continue to improve, and that weren't honestly a lot of them expected to be in the playoff race this year, and they are. And some of those teams are legitimate playoff teams that could actually be threats in the playoffs this year.
Thunder, definitely Thunder.
Exactly, and that's the thing, is that the Trailblazers aren't in a position to improve like those teams are, so the time to win is now, and the fact that they're not winning means that there is a good chance that changes will need to be made, and Terry Stotts is going to be caught in the crossfires in all likelihood if things don't start to change soon.
Agreed.
Do we want to move to the next topic, biggest All-Star?
Yeah. I think we can shift to that next topic now. So the next topic we were going to get into today is biggest All-Star snubs. And we have 5 All-Star snubs ranked, and these rankings can be disputed, but we think that these are some of the guys that were definitely some of the biggest All-Star snubs of all time. And now that we're past the All-Star break, we thought it would be good to look back, and especially with Bradley Beal. And I guess you could make an argument, guys like Zach LaVine getting snubbed, and Devin Booker got snubbed, even though he did wind up getting in. It was an All-Star season where there were guys who didn't make it. There were arguments that they could have made it. So we thought it would be a good idea to break down some of the biggest snubs of all time.
We wanted to see where Bradley Beal would rank in
Yes, indeed.
all-time snubs.
Yeah, we all have differing opinions, and you can too. This is just, as a group, our consensus of what we think.
Yes. So the fifth biggest All-Star snub of all time, in our opinion, was Al Jefferson in 2013-2014. He averaged 21.8 points a game, 10.8 rebounds per game, shooting 0.9% from the field. He finished third-team All-NBA and led the Hornets, whose second-best player was a young Kemba Walker, and the third-best player was an old Gerald Henderson, to a 43-win season and a playoff berth.
Didn't they take the Heat to 7 games that season, or was that a different season?
No, they got swept that season. But still, getting a team whose third-best player is Gerald Henderson.
The Bobcats. Come on.
Yeah, Bobcats. I'm sorry. That was the last season of the Bobcats. Was the Bobcats at that time. But that year, Al Jefferson never made an All-Star team. So a guy like that, who is definitely going to go down in history as an underappreciated player, but in his prime was at moments close to unstoppable, and was just a really high quality player who's definitely going to be forgotten in NBA history. We definitely thought that looking at this was a really good example of a player who definitely could have made an All-Star team and probably should have made an All-Star team, but did not get that opportunity, and that will tarnish his legacy to a certain extent, having never made an All-Star team.
It is so sad to see, Dirk Nowitzki or other players get praised for their post game, like how skilled they were, like for their post game, but then no one ever mentions how unstoppable Al Jefferson was on that end. It's just
there were
so
moments
sickening
that Al Jefferson was truly to the level, like, you're considering this guy in the conversation of the NBA. You're looking at it and you're like, there's just nobody who can handle this guy.
He's the most underrated post scorer ever.
Exactly. And he's good. I mean, in 10 years, people are going to have forgotten about Al Jefferson. It's just the way it is.
So sad.
And he was the third best center in the league this year. And I just think he definitely should have made an All-Star team that year.
And here's the thing. The league tried to correct it by giving him an All-NBA team, but really, casual fans look at All-Star appearances to make their ratings ever.
Yeah, how many casual fans look at the third team NBA, especially for a season like 2013?
And while third team All-NBA is actually better than an All-Star, because less players make an All-NBA team than make an All-Star appearance, it just, to the casual fan, doesn't look as cool. It doesn't look as flattering as it just doesn't. And that will forever tarnish his legacy. Despite the fact that what were you saying?
And that's the biggest thing about Al Jefferson, is that he's going to be a forgotten man in history because he never won a championship. guys, and it's kind of sad to see that forgotten. And the fact that he was robbed of an all-star team like this that would have given his career a lot more potency, and it's just kind of sad to see a guy like that who's truly phenomenal at what they did that is going to be forgotten in history.
Yeah, and it's also the fact that he made the playoffs that I think is the most impressive part. Not only was he on a team called the Bobcat, but his third best player was Gerald Henderson. His fourth best player was Gary Neal. I mean, what are these? Like, I know these players obviously, but most people don't.
Yeah.
The casual. Okay, let's. If you asked 10 people on the street who say that they watch the NBA, how many of them do you think could name Gary Neal? One?
No.
Maybe?
No
Exactly.
One.
Yeah.
No one.
Gary Neal's the type of guy who is only remembered by legitimately, I would honestly say close to fanatic NBA fans, guys who care,
Bobcat
guys
fans.
like who are listening to this, and Bobcats. Yeah,
Bobcat
and Spurs fans.
If you're a
And Spurs
Bobcats
fans will
fan,
remember it as
please let us know. How does it feel to
I
lose
feel
your team?
I feel bad because Michael Jordan is your owner, and that does not work out because Michael Jordan, the owner, is not Michael Jordan, the player. Let me just say that.
He is one of the worst owners in the league, despite how good he was as a player.
Owner / general manager. I mean, he's been in charge of player personnel decisions, and I mean, let's look. The Hornets. They were the Bobcats. They were that name change didn't do anything. They've never succeeded to turn into a successful franchise because right now they don't have the star power, and they never truly have had the consistent depth of roster to be a competitive team. And so a guy like that is going to be forgotten in history, and I think that definitely deserves.
And you know what the biggest thing that shows that this team should have never done anything? Chris Douglas Roberts.
Oh my gosh.
The Dread Pirate. You know what's crazy?
Former man.
He averaged 21 minutes per game.
That is so funny.
He couldn't even find a roster spot with the Mavericks.
Yeah, and that was a bad Mavericks team. The Mavericks team that was several years back. I think he played like 2 games. He was on a 10-day contract for a not very good Mavericks team whose best players were an old Dirk and then OJ Mayo. And like, he couldn't get a roster spot. He couldn't get a roster spot over guys like Mike James and a super washed Derek Fisher. I mean, and he was playing legitimate minutes on this Bobcats.
Yes, he was playing 21 minutes per game.
This team made the playoffs. I think that in of itself is enough to. Al Jefferson should have been an All-Star that season. It's not. Okay.
Yeah, in a nutshell, put more respect on Al Jefferson. Remember his. Just remember
the name and remember the game.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed.
The game.
All right.
Yep. Okay.
Moving on to the next player, we have John Stockton. The 8th season, he averaged 14.7 points per game, 13.8 assists per game, 3 steals a game, shooting 57.4. That's not wrong. 57.4% from the field as a point guard in the hand-checking NBA of the late 1980s. And he was second team All-NBA and finished 10th in MVP voting. He didn't make the All-Star team.
I'm
sorry. That's a problem. None of us were alive for that season, so none of us can really go, though we do know our NBA history, none of us can really in time that far and know what the NBA was truly like at that point. But just looking at those numbers, how can a player who averages 3 steals a game, he's one of the most elite, shoots a ridiculously high percentage for a guard, is the best passer in NBA history, and was scoring at a solid rate as well while having that ridiculous efficiency and finished 10th in MVP voting.
You know what's
crazy? Missed the All-Star game.
Quickly going back to Al Jefferson, in 13-14, he was 8th in MVP voting. Above players like Paul George, Lamar
I didn't even know that.
Kevin Love, Tim Duncan, Carmelo Anthony.
I did not know that. Wow, that is there's another thing for Al Jefferson, but yeah, looking at that Stockton season, it's hard. It's impossible to tell me that a player putting up those numbers on that efficiency and as elite of a defender as he was misses the All-Star game.
Also, another thing, guys, you know who made it to the All-Star game that season in 1988 over John Stockton?
Who?
It was a guy named Alvin Robertson.
What was Alvin Robertson averaging that season?
Name doesn't matter.
Because that's a name that I've heard, but like barely.
He was actually really good. I mean, he averaged 20 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals. But again,
What team was he on?
the Spurs.
Yeah. Did they succeed?
That season, they were 31-51. They weren't even that good.
Yeah, but a playoff team in the Jazz with the 10th player in MVP voting.
Yeah,
doesn't make the All-Star team.
He did terrible.
They definitely had some bias. Well, here's the thing. He also, Alvin Robertson did average 3 steals as well.
Yeah. Well, it isn't a terrible. Like, he also averaged 0.8 blocks. That's actually very good. But
I mean,
again, it's John Stockton.
No
one. There's very few players who've averaged 14 assists per game, 57 field goal percentage,
57%
as a point.
57%.
Not as a Dwight Powell, as a as a John Stockton, a point guard.
57% is the type of percentage that you expect a guy like
Andre Drummond. I don't think Andre Drummond's ever reached that.
But my point is, somebody that you would expect to have a high.
Yeah.
Because all of their points are coming off of lobs and putback dunks and easy layups. Guys like that who are getting easy points, that's what you would expect their field goal percentage to be. You're playing like the best or second best player on a playoff team, and he's playing point guard, shooting 57.5% from the field.
Yeah.
That is mind-boggling numbers. And he didn't make the All-Star team.
They definitely had some bias towards Alvin Robertson because he had made. So I feel like they just gave it to him based on points and past experience.
That's fair.
That's very dumb to me, but
it's the reasoning behind it.
Okay, yeah, we value reason, but again, how?
It's hard to argue with those numbers. It's very hard to argue with those numbers.
Yeah, it's tough. That's why it's not number 1, because there is some reasoning behind it. Very little. It's very fragile, but that's why it's not number 1.
One thing I will say though is I'm glad that John Stockton isn't going to be forgotten in history like I.
Yeah, thank God. I mean, the guy. If John Stockton's ever forgotten, I mean, we should all be concerned for the state of the world.
Yes. Yeah, John Stockton's the greatest passer. I don't be a guy that passes.
And he's probably also the greatest defensive point guard.
He's one of the most clutch. He's one of the most clutch players of all time.
One of the best. I'm saying one of the best, not the best.
Yes, he's one of the best defensive point guards of all time. He's one of the clutchest players
of all time.
John Stockton was the originator of the step back 3. I don't know if y'all know that, but John Stockton in close games had a killer step back and pull up 3-pointer,
and he could still hit 57% of them.
Exactly. It's just absurd that a player of that talent level putting up those numbers can miss the All-Star game.
Yeah, it's like Mark Price. If Mark Price could pass, like Jesus.
Exactly. If Mark Price was the best passer of all time and an elite defender, which he was either of the two.
Yeah, he was probably a better shooter, like from 3 and free throw, but he was not even on the same level of defense or passing.
Oh, for sure. I think we can. Have y'all have anything else?
No,
I'm all good.
Nutshell: John Stockton's a god. Alvin Robertson, yes, sure. You got lucky.
Yes, you did. Number 3 on this list is a much more recent name, and it's the name that started this discussion for us in the first place, and that is Bradley Beal this season, putting up, at the time of this recording, 30.1 points per game, 6 assists per game, 4.5 rebounds a game, on 45% from the field.
45.7.
Yes, 45.7% from the field, sorry. And not only that, at the time of this recording, the last 2 nights, Bradley Beal just put up 53 points and then 55 points on back-to-back nights and lost both games.
You know what's crazy, though, is that he's shooting 57% between the two.
John Stockton parallel? Question mark?
He shot 56 and then 58.
The only reason that Bradley Beal didn't make the All-Star team this year is because his team is bad.
It's not really even the
becomes how in the world is he was a starter. Trae Young was an All-Star starter. And this is not taking anything away from Trae Young, because I'm not taking anything from Trae Young, because he's an amazing offensive player. But Trae Young was an All-Star starter.
Here's the thing about
make the All-Star team.
Here's the thing about Bradley Beal. His entire team was injured 90% of the season. It's hard to win games consistently when you're playing with a different set of roster every game.
And then when everyone comes back, they're playing. They have one of the toughest schedules left. So,
but even
it's unfair.
Even in the games losing, though, I mean, last night they played the Bucks and they put up a legitimate fight. We're down 20 and sent that game time. And Bradley Beal is just single-handed dragging this team to be a competitive team.
Yes.
If the Wizards didn't have Bradley Beal, do they win?
They win 0 games. They're probably
they don't win 0, but it would be pushing it if they won 10.
Like that team is in the discussion. Worst team in NBA history without Bradley Beal.
Yeah,
I think we can agree on that.
But instead, they have still a legitimate shot to make the playoffs.
I think.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if they'd be the worst because even without Bradley Beal throughout the season, they kind of displayed a good offense. They had a pretty good offense.
Yeah, they beat the Nuggets, the Celtics, and the Heat without Bradley. So.
Oh yeah, I think they'd still beat the Heat like every time.
I mean, the Heat lost to the Cavs in overtime yesterday after choking a 15-point lead or something.
At the time of this recording, yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But I think it's pretty easy to look at that and say, how does a guy averaging 30 a game and quite simply dragging his team to the only ones they get?
They're the 9th seed.
Yeah, they're at least competitive. I'm not going to.
The Hawks are not competitive. I mean, they've got a little bit better, but they're not.
But the Hawks, at the time Trae Young was voted into the All-Star game as a starter, they were the worst team in the league. They had 8 wins. They were the worst team in the league. Trae Young is the worst defensive player in the NBA.
People say Bradley Beal's bad on defense, but there's 2 things. One, he's not worse than Trae Young.
And not only that, it's his team. On his team is terrible.
Yes.
Yeah, it's impossible for him to play defense and also shoot like a god, like he has been.
And how are you going to be the focal point of the offense every night and have to handle and have to control as much as he does and still be able to put in elite effort on the defensive end? And that's the thing, is in the past we've seen Bradley Beal, while nobody's saying he's a good defender, he's not an awful defender. And he's had a really bad defensive season this year. But that can honestly be attributed to the fact that everybody around him sucks on defense. And not only that, I mean, literally Thomas Bryant and Rui Hachimura are the worst defensive players at their position this season.
According to the advanced statistics, but...
Davis Bertans is one of the worst defensive players.
Yeah, but Davis definitely makes up for it on the offense then. It's players that need to be offensive.
My point is the fact that he is considered a horrible defender isn't completely fair to him because in prior seasons of his career, he has not been in that discussion. And 15-16. Comparing him to a guy like Trae Young, who was an all-star starter on the worst team in the league at the
in 15-16,
that just doesn't make sense to me.
In the 15-16 season, he was considered one of the best young defender guards in the league, and now he's considered the worst. It doesn't make sense. You don't just become that bad at defense overnight.
And the fact that's the thing, he hasn't become that bad at defense.
That's the point.
His team around him is just that bad at defense.
Are we ready to move on?
It's not like you just become Michael Kidd-Gilchrist.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we'll move on. We will be back to, but we will move on.
Don't worry, we will spend a lot more time talking about Bradley Beal. So for those Wizards fans out there, of y'all,
the 2 of us,
and we'll get back exactly, and we'll get back to it. And I feel for you, Austin. That's all I gotta say. But moving on to number 2 on the All-Star Snubs list, we have Rudy Gobert in 2018-2019 last season, where he put up 15.9 points a game, 12.9 rebounds a game, 2.3 blocks per game, shooting 67% from the field, and was 3rd team All-NBA and 1 Defensive Player of the Year. He didn't make the All-Star team.
It's impressive to me whenever a Defender of the Year doesn't make an All-Star team. That just proves how much defense that defense does not matter to the All-Star vote.
It just bothers me that the casual fan who is 50% of the All-Star vote doesn't vote for a player like Rudy Gobert because they don't look at defense. They just don't care.
They only look at offense.
Here's the thing. You don't even have to look at advanced statistics to tell that Rudy Gobert is a top 3 defender in the league.
All you have to do is watch 5 minutes of a Jazz, and Rudy Gobert is one of the best defensive players in the league. A casual. I mean, I could sit down on the couch with my dad, who doesn't, and watch a Jazz, and within 5 minutes, that Rudy Gobert guy is an amazing defender because he impacts the game in so many ways on the defensive end of the floor. He is so elite defensively.
He's underrated to the fact that people don't realize how much of an effect he has on the Jazz and their record and how well they play. I think he's the biggest part of that team. He is the cornerstone of that entire team. His defensive ability consistently every night to almost lock down any center he plays against it's impressive. It's just really impressive to watch. And the fact that he was not at all.
But yeah, I don't think it's that complicated. You look at them like that, a guy who is a incredibly efficient offensive player, is a phenomenal rebounding player, probably the best defensive center in the league. Not probably the best defensive center in the league, and you could argue the best defensive player in the league. A guy who has won multiple defensive player of the years and might win it again this year. I mean, you don't luck into those awards.
Yeah, that's where it's pushing it for me. He's really close to the best. He's definitely in the argument. There's many arguments you could make. To me, he's on the line. I struggle putting him at number 1, but I definitely see the argument. I don't see how he's an all-star.
It's hard to say a guy who is able to impact the game offensively effectively while being so elite defensively doesn't make the All-Star game, especially put up last year on the efficiency that he put up. And he was third team All-NBA again. Guys don't make All-NBA teams out of luck. Guys don't win Defensive Player of the Year awards out of luck. You have to.
That's the same thing as Al Jefferson. An All-NBA team is more impressive than an All-Star game.
And again, you got to look. They made the playoffs last year. They were the 6th.
Yeah. Again, another team making the playoffs, and people just forget. I feel like centers are underappreciated in the league. Right?
Defensive players in general are underappreciated in the league.
I don't think centers are as important in today's league, but yeah, defensive players. Unless you're Kawhi.
People don't talk about players like Jokic as much as they should.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
When people talk about players like Jokic, way more than they talk about guys like Gobert, who have always been elite defensive players and been able to affect the game offensively, much more than guys like Jokic have affected the game defensively. And yes, Jokic has improved as a defensive player this year, but still, nobody's going to put him in the conversation for even being a good defender. And you look at guys, I mean, it's just defense is so underappreciated. And you look at guys like Rudy Gobert, and that's a great example of a guy who is such an elite defensive player and so amazing defensively and has a master team. And this wasn't the first time he was snubbed. He was snubbed in 2017, was third team All-NBA that season, was probably snubbed in 2017, 2018 as well. It's like 3 years in a row that you look at Rudy Gobert getting snubbed. And it's especially at 2018-19 where you see him really truly start to reach up his peak and be so impactful on both sides of the floor and miss the All-Star team.
That's what going back really quickly to Al Jefferson again baffles me is that he didn't just have one of these seasons. We just chose the most impressive one. He had multiple seasons where he was averaging even more points, even more rebounds, and didn't make it. The only reason why we chose this year is because he made an All-NBA team, and he was 8th in MVP voting, and he made the playoffs. But all these players have multiple seasons where they should have made it, and I'm glad Rudy Gobert made it this year, because if he didn't make it this year, I don't know if he was ever going to make it. Because they just never wanted to give him one for some reason.
For sure.
Agreed.
Y'all have anything else to add to the Rudy Gobert conversation?
No, I'm all good.
Right. In a nutshell, the NBA for some reason values a guy like Trae Young, who is a top, probably 10 offensive player. Where would you guys put him? Like top 5, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Trae?
Top 10.
Not top 5. Not
top 10?
No.
Okay. That's what I originally went with. But he's the worst defender in the league. But no one looks at that. But Rudy Gobert, one of the best defenders in the league. Top 3, actually. Better than Trae Young's top 10.
Yeah, that's another reason we're waiting.
And he's not bad on offense. He's not bad on offense either.
That was my argument last year why Giannis had to be MVP over Harden. Is his defensive ability as well. Not only was he a god on the floor, he actually played defense.
And I can promise y'all, all y'all listeners, that when we do our MVP predictions episode, which will be coming pretty within the next few weeks or something, this will be a topic that we will definitely be coming back to again, because guys, defense is so underappreciated in today's NBA. And I think nutshell of looking at guys like Al Jefferson and guys like Rudy Gobert and John Stockton in that season, and you look at other All-Star snubs throughout history who were elite defensive players and yet didn't make the All-Star team. DeAndre Jordan got snubbed a couple times back when he was one of the best defensive players in the league. Just guys like that, and you look at what they were able to do on the defensive end, and it's just so underappreciated. And that's an issue, and it's definitely something that we will definitely continue to talk about in the future. But transitioning to the number one All-Star snub in our opinion, my opinion specifically, I guess this can be debated, but the biggest All-Star snub in my opinion was Dirk Nowitzki in 2001, when he averaged 21.8 points a game, 9.2 rebounds a game, shooting 47.4% from the field and 38.7% from three in like his second season in the league, third season in the league.
Yeah.
And shot 84% from the free throw line as well, and led the Mavs to 50 years, and it was like a 15-game increase on this previous season, and made them a competitive team that was also competitive in the playoffs. And he didn't make the All-Star team.
Yeah.
So, Enrique, knowing that you're a huge Maverick, let's talk about this Dirk season for a second. What do you think of Dirk getting snubbed for the... He was at least relatively in the conversation of a 50-40-90 watch, was a top 10 player in the league, created a Mavericks winning culture in a team that had not had that for years, and led them to a 53-win season in a season where they weren't really expected to produce like that. What do you think about a guy like that missing the playoffs? Missing the All-Star team.
It's crazy. I mean, the dude. I mean,
that's a great word for
it. It's stupid. Well, the guy. I mean, like we mentioned, he averaged 39% from the 3-point line, and you know, I mean, in this NBA,
I want to name you a man before.
Yeah.
Before 2000, who was shooting 39% three on high volume as the best player on his team on a good playoff team.
Sam Perkins.
But Sam Perkins was never like a number one option like this. He was never putting up the shot volume.
And while the difference between all these All-Star snubs, I mean, Al Jefferson did help lead his team to the playoffs. Also,
Stockton made the playoffs this year, right?
Most of these guys are
as well.
I mean, all these guys made the playoffs. Maybe Bradley Beal will. I'm still not counting them out. We'll see. But I mean, they have a really tough schedule. But if they win with the with that difficult schedule, I mean, the Wizards could probably win one game against the Bucks. They're really difficult to keep up with. But yeah, going back to Dirk, I mean, he legit led his team to the first winning season in years since, like, what was it, the 80s when they had Mark Aguirre and whatever. Yeah. It was that one, right? I'm pretty sure. I mean, those Mavs teams are really underrated. But yeah, just getting out of that depressed state of that famine of just not winning anything. Like, basically the Mavs at the 90s and stuff were just basically the Charlotte Bobcats. It was that bad. But yeah, thank God we drafted this man.
But I have a couple stats to look at.
Yeah,
they won a playoff series that season. They were that was the first time they had made the playoffs since 1989-1990. It had been more than a decade since they had made the playoffs. It's the first time they made it past the first round since 1987-1988. They weren't expected to be that type of team going into the year. Dirk had not proven himself, honestly, as that type of player until this season. But then you look at a team that wasn't expected to have this quality and had not for years been even a competitive team. And then all of a sudden, basically because of one player, they go from a bad team to an elite team that makes it past the first round.
In his third season.
And he doesn't make the playoffs. I mean, the All-Star team.
The kid could barely speak English. I mean, when he came into the league, and now 3 years later, when he barely could speak English, he leads a team past the first round. It's quite insane to me that I think this has to be European bias. Like it just has to be, and it's just so disrespectful. But I'm just glad. I'm glad they made. I mean, I'm just glad they made it up to him in 2019 through the All-Star game. They let him
basically the charity All-Star appearance.
Yeah. I'm just happy they did that. I mean, that's the only thing that kind of alleviates this snub, but still, they really disrespected Dirk here, and just I'm sad.
Yep.
Sad to see this, but
all right.
What else should we add? That's it, right? For Dirk, we all know Dirk is the god.
We all know Dirk is one of the greatest players of all time, but the fact that he missed the All-Star
changed the game
is just such a. And the fact that he was in the process of changing and shooting percentage in the volume that guys like that had never shot before.
Yeah, and I think at this time he was pretty athletic.
Very. And he was a good defender in these early seasons.
Yeah, people just look at it as when he's like 33 or 34, and everyone's just like, oh, he's very bad. But even in those seasons, he was very smart. Even in 2019, I mean, at least he would make smart defensive plays, even though he's the worst defender of all time. In 2019.
At that point, yeah, he was moving like a 80-year-old man.
Yeah, he was very smart on defense, and back then when he was in his prime, he could actually, play defense.
He was a quality defender.
Yeah.
Don't forget his donkey.
I think that year they played the Lakers in the playoffs, and I'm not going to say he guarded Shaq amazingly, but he was competitive.
Yeah, that's what I love
against
about
Shaq. He played competitive defense against prime Shaquille O'Neal.
Dirk's defense reminds me a lot of Kyle Korver. They're not athletically prowess, but they're so intelligent on defense that they can always make some plays that always everything.
Yeah. I think Dirk was more athletic at this time, but yeah, I see your point.
Well, Kyle Korver was definitely more athletic during his time.
Well, yeah, obviously, everyone was.
Yes. Yep. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up the All-Star Snubs section. Basically, few takeaways from the All-Star Snubs. If you're not a big name player, you struggle looking at Al Jefferson and even Rudy Gobert to a certain extent. They don't respect defense. And then you have ones that are just kind of hard to explain. Dirk missing the All-Star game that year just doesn't make it. John Stockton with the stats.
All these are hard to explain.
Yeah, exactly. It just looking at this shows you that All-Star voting is a crapshoot. It really is.
It's very inconsistent. I mean, Al Jefferson in 2013-14, a guy like Roy Hibbert, while he was a very good defensive player, and I'm happy that they respected his defense of prowess. I mean, the guy only averaged 10 points and 6 rebounds and 2 blocks. Those stats are very similar to Dwight Powell. Okay,
he made an all-star team.
Yeah.
Averaging 10 points and 6 rebounds.
Well, yes, he was a defensive god.
Still,
he should not have gone over Al Jefferson. I'm sorry.
Yep. It's hard to explain things like that.
And it's like, winning is what makes these players make the All-Star game. Then you look at Bradley Beal. I mean, right now he's averaging. I mean, I think before the All-Star game he was averaging a little bit less than Trae Young, but his team was winning more than Trae Young. Yet Trae Young makes the starting lineup for the All-Star game, and yet Bradley Beal completely snubbed, even though their stats are kind of identical in terms of points per game
just so
and field goal percentage. It's crazy. And also, thank God they don't have a European bias as much these years.
Because we've had so many great European players. We've had guys like
Dirk.
And just international players in general. Dirk, Tony.
I'm just happy Dirk changed that narrative or helped change that narrative.
Yes.
I'm not giving him the full credit. I mean, there was other players.
Because now we have guys like Luka.
Yeah.
Doing ridiculous things in the second year. And guys like Luka.
Thanks to Dirk, Luka did not get snubbed.
Yeah, but guys like Luka would never have had the opportunity they have now without guys like Dirk and Tim Duncan paving the way for international players to be respected the way they are today.
All right, so now to move on, we are going to talk about Bradley Beal's amazing run. At the time of this recording, I think it was last 10 games. Are we going last 10 games or just in general? He's been in general going off. So what do you guys think of Bradley Beal suffering with the Wizards?
There are a couple of questions about Bradley Beal. The first question is,
How?
why did he sign an extension?
I think because he wants to. He said multiple times that he wanted to champion the Wizards, and he doesn't feel right leaving a team to go to the Lakers. He said that he would not want to do that ever.
I just don't see any potential for them to win a championship.
I disagree strongly, especially with the possibility of John Wall coming back.
Yeah, but we don't know how John Wall is going to play, especially because his game was so. You just don't know how a guy's going to return. And that's not saying that he can't return to the player that he was, but even if he does return to 90% of the player that he was, which I think probably is about the max of what we could expect, if he were to return to that, it's hard for me to see a Wizards team, even with this Bradley Beal and John Wall, and even allowing for the development of guys like Tons and Rui Hachimura. I still don't see them as a true threat to teams like the Celtics and the Bucks and the Lakers and the Clippers, and even in a couple of years, teams like the Mavericks and the Nuggets and stuff like that. I just don't see them the title.
Well, we will definitely find out next year how that looks. Definitely. We'll find out how much John Wall has come back, what he's come back to, and we'll definitely see the growth of people like Mo Wagner. We'll see people grow of Rui, like you stated. And we'll definitely see the growth of Thomas Bryant to see if he can be more healthy.
Yes. And a better defensive player.
Definitely, hopefully.
Just defensive improvement in general for guys like Mo Wagner. I mean, they're young. They have the ability to improve defensively, and these are athletic guys who are. I mean, even Davis and Mo, they're not super athletic, but they're young. They still have decent legs. They have the ability to be at least capable defenders, and it'll be interesting to see when the Wizards have their full lineup healthy again going into next season, if they're able to put out more effort on the defensive end and are able to put themselves in the conversation for a 5 seed. Because if they're able, then who knows, maybe does consider signing another extension. Maybe they are able to keep the core together and add another couple pieces and turn themselves into contenders. I think it could happen.
Yeah, I think. Don't the Wizards? Jan Mahinmi's contract's gonna end, which was I think $15 million or $16 million. Don't they have?
Yeah, well, we're gonna have a good bit of cap space to sign somebody if we have.
Yeah, you guys need to somehow.
That's why people were saying that Carmelo was gonna.
Who?
We'll definitely
Carmelo?
see who choose. Yeah, that's what people were saying. We'll definitely see who decides to choose to fill in that role.
If the Wizards don't show a lot of improvements in next year, Bradley Beal's gonna want out.
I don't think so. I disagree.
Have you seen him recently? He is pissed.
Well, he's
pissed. But he's pissed with himself. If you listen to what he said on the 55 and 53 point game, he said, "I'm a winner. The 55 points and 53 points don't matter if I don't win."
I agree, but he has to realize, and not just him. You look at other guys around the league like Damian Lillard, and you wonder if they're just wasting times of their careers to a certain extent on teams that are subpar.
I think there's a line you have to cross. Because loyalty is amazing, and I feel like it should not be our choice to say whether or not they should have actually gone to a different team, or if it's truly wasting their career. If they never want to leave the city they're in, if they want to win a championship with their team, let them try their hardest to do that. And I'm not going to stop people like Dame from continuing his dream of trying to win a championship and doing everything that is possible to make that happen.
I know what you mean. I'm just saying it has to be in the back of his mind. You know it has to be in the back of his mind. Looking at this and putting up the performances that he does. And I know he's saying he's frustrated.
Okay, here's a different argument. What if Giannis doesn't win a championship? What happens then? Does Giannis win out?
Here's the thing. If the Bucks don't win the championship, he's gone. If they don't win the championship in the next 2 years. I think they would. I think there's a good chance that they do win the championship. But if they don't, he's gone.
I don't think so again, because I feel like Giannis is
pretty
despite the fact that like many players, like Dame, like Bradley, like Giannis, want to be the player that brings them the first championship either ever or in the long time.
Right.
Or really long time. All three of those teams have it once. It's either the early 80s or the late or early 70s.
But you also have to look at the fact that as much as we know about KD now, before he left the Thunder, he was considered a loyal player. Kyrie Irving said he wanted to stay in Boston. Russell Westbrook wanted to be a Thunder player for his entire career. Guys like that, it changes.
It's different because Brad knew what he was signing up. He knew without John Wall and with the health concerns of certain players that
he said he wanted to help the Wizards build a championship or a possible championship roster.
Yeah.
Like he really wanted to be.
So is Dame. That's why I have a lot of respect for players who, despite their circumstances with the team, are like, no, I'm going to win a championship here. Because it will mean 40 times more if Dwight Howard would have won a championship with the Magic than if he won one with the Lakers this year.
That's for sure.
It would have felt 200 times more important to players like I said, Dwight Howard.
Kevin Durant.
I think even Shaq. If Shaq would have won a championship with the Magic, I doubt he would have went to the Lakers.
I don't think it was Shaq's fault that.
I think it was Shaq's fault. He got locked up by Hakeem. He got destroyed by.
No. I mean, like in terms of, the Magic didn't offer what he wanted.
No. I'm not talking about him leaving. That was definitely his fault why he left. I'm talking that he was destroyed in the finals by Hakeem.
Yeah, that was the worst possible team they could have played.
Oh yeah, because Hakeem's like, I'm better than you, at least right now.
Prime Hakeem is in the argument for 5 most unstoppable players of all.
Yeah, he's not better than Shaq, though.
You know who the most unstoppable player is?
I think Shaq is the most unstoppable player of all time.
You know who
the most unstoppable players of all time?
Here's the thing. Shaq is up there for the most unstoppable player in history.
Oh, for sure. And I would make an argument he is the most unstoppable player in history.
I don't know, man. People like Gronk, if you get Gronk hot, oh boy, he's got a problem. Gronk, it's just the game's over.
Fair.
But he's definitely in the argument, and there's no question.
But it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years with the Wizards, because we know that he loves loyalty. I would not be surprised if we don't see legitimate progress within the next 2 years. If he wants,
we have until 22-23, and then he has a player off 23, something like that. Maybe the year before.
But if y'all aren't contenders by then, he's going somewhere else.
I don't know.
We'll definitely find out.
It really depends on what the Wizards organization does. I mean, before, who was their manager before?
Very dumb.
Yeah, it was just some dumb person. Let's just call him dumb person. This dumb person signed players like Jan Mahimi and Otto Porter to very big contracts.
4 years, $64 million for Jan Mahimi.
The year before,
that's up there for one of the worst contracts ever.
Yeah, he showed great progress, but he was not worth the contract, even with the progress.
That's one of the worst contracts in NBA history.
His final year, like this year, he's 33. Like it never made sense.
It's much worse though. Timothy played. He never played.
The season before he got that contract, though. The season before he got that contract, he averaged 9 points a game, shooting 58% from the field, which is good. But he was averaging 9 points and 7 rebounds a game, and they paid him $16 million a year.
Well,
he was already 29 years.
That's my point about Timothy Mozgov. He's like, oh, I'm going to play well in the 15-16 finals, and the Lakers are like, dope. Well, let's sign him to a $1 billion deal.
I'm saying it's the worst contract.
Oh, yeah, Luol Deng, you can come over here as well. Remember Luol Deng?
He's different argument. Tom Thibodeau, Luol Deng, and Luol Deng.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
right.
Well, I'm just saying, like the contract.
It's different when you sign an all-star, though, expecting them to be an all-star because they've proven it. It's different for like you were saying than Jan Mahimi, who never proven to be all-star.
He averaged about, for the 4 years combined, he averaged about 5 points and five rebounds a game.
Yeah, this year he's averaging like 8 and 8, I think.
This year he's averaging 7.7 points and 5.8 rebounds a game in 20 minutes a game.
It's not bad, but not for the contract. But yeah,
we got a guy $16 million a year, and this is the best season of his 4 years in Washington, and he's playing 21 minutes a game, putting up 7.7 and 5 points.
His shooting percentage isn't bad though, right?
He's shooting 50%.
Oof.
Not great.
Not great. Not bad. Not terrible, but not great.
19 points, 19% from three, even though he's shooting almost one a game. That makes no sense.
Stop shooting.
Yawn.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, guys, I think that should be the end of the episode. It's about an hour.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, this is going to wrap up the Behind the Arc podcast. Make sure to leave us a like and leave us a comment in the YouTube video. Make sure to follow our podcast on Spotify and share it. And we'll be back at you next week with another episode. And always remember that the Mobamba is always with you.
Always.